Hi, I'm Billy, and welcome to Jack of Trades. In this part of the series, we will learn how to build a simple REST API using a web application framework for Node.js called Express. Before we proceed, you will need to install Node.js and XAMPP on your local computer. I'm going to put the links in the description below. Since I already have XAMPP installed, I prepared a database called Express API for our little demo. With that being said, let's open up our Explorer window and create a folder called Express-API. Let's go inside our folder and right-click. In my case, I am using the git bash command line interface, but you can use the built-in Windows command prompt for this if you are on Windows PC. This demo also works if you happen to be in a Linux environment. Since Express runs on a Node.js environment, we have to start our application by creating a Package.Json. To do that, we begin by typing in npm init and hit enter. This command generates a Package.Json file that defines the information of your web application. Node.js needs this Package.Json file so that you can download third-party libraries that you're going to need to build your projects. In this case, we just hit enter. We can change the details later. Now that we have our Package.Json file, let's open up our favorite code editor. I am using Visual Studio Code. You can use other code editors like Sublime Text, Notepad++, it doesn't matter. Let's go to the root folder of our web application to install the necessary node packages for our REST API. Primarily, we will install the Express node package, which is the REST API framework we are going to use. We are also going to install Joy node package for our out-of-the-box validation library. We are also going to install a Node.js library called cur so that we will be able to access our API from a remote server. Because in these little series, we are going to build two different web applications, the front-end application and the back-end. The front-end application is supposed to be the one that accesses the resource from the back-end. To establish preparation, we will build the back-end application first before we start building the front-end. We are also going to use moment.js here to handle our date-time data types quickly. Moving on, let's install these packages. Go to your web application's root directory and type in npm install express, space, joy, space, cur, space, moment to install these packages. Hit enter and wait for it to finish downloading. Now that we installed all these packages, let's begin writing our simple REST API. Open up your Package.Json file. There, you will notice that in the index.js file is put as the main. That means we are telling Node.js to consider our index.js file as our web application's entry point. Now, let's start creating our index.js file and begin writing our code. First, we will use the Express library in our application by typing in var express equals require express. We will have a little bit of explaining here. The keyword require is a Node.js built-in function used to include all the modules that exist in a separate file within a Node.js application. Since we installed Express earlier, the require keyword finds and enables us to use the Node.js packages inside our node modules directory. The node modules directory is the default directory the node uses to put of all the third-party modules we install within our Node.js application, and it is listed within our Package.Json file under the dependencies. Let's create an Express app instance by typing var app equals express open and close parentheses. We will also use the curs library like so. We will also define the port number for our web server. Every web server application needs a port to run to. This kind of approach searches the default port in your server when you upload this in the production server. And since we are still working on the local host, we will automatically be directed to the port 3005 like so. To use these modules, we will add them to the instance of our Express app like so. The first one we will include is the curs module. This module allows us to access our REST API from a remote server. Since the React application we will build later is in a separate server, we need to add cross-site resource share. We will also add the express.json and express URL encoded functions to our app instance like so. The express.json enables us to return an application JSON response. The URL encoded enables us to receive request data from a client app primarily via the post method. I will provide the complete source code for this tutorial so that you can have a reference. The GitHub link is in the description below. Now we can start writing the endpoints for our REST API application. For simplicity's sake, we are only going to write 4 API endpoints in this demo. That would be the API endpoint to display each user's tweets, the API endpoint to save our tweets in the database, the API endpoint to delete a tweet based on a specific ID, and the API endpoint for the login authentication for each user. But before we do these things, we should set our app to listen to the actual port we set above. By doing this, we will be able to run our server later. We type in node index.js in our command line's root directory to run our server. To stop your local server, press Ctrl+C on your keyboard. Now that we've prepared the entry point for our server, let's write a sample endpoint for our REST API. Let us use the get method to test it out. Notice that each time we make changes to our files, we stop our local server and start it again for the changes to take effect. Now, this stopping and starting the server is a kind of annoying thing to do, especially when you are still developing your Node.js application. To solve this, we will install another Node.js package called nodemon that automatically restarts our server when we change something in one of our files. Just copy and paste npm install -g nodemon in the root directory of your Node.js application and hit enter to install it. Now, we can type in nodemon in index.js, and we will be able to edit our files without restarting our server more often. As you can see, it restarts our Node application each time we change something in our file and save it. We will prepare the actual database tables that we are going to use in this demo. Now everything is set up, let's create an endpoint to our REST API, and we will use MySQL for our database. To test our API, let's add in a temporary endpoint that will display all the tweets. Before we could use MySQL, we need to install the MySQL node package to our project to use the module. And to connect to our database server, let's add in a config folder, and inside it, we add a database.js file. The database.js file will be our custom module for our MySQL database connection. We make this approach so that we can easily connect to our database without having to rewrite the database configuration every single time. There's a magic keyword in Node.js, which is the module.exports. When you use module.exports, it makes your function available for import anywhere in your Node.js files. Now, we will import our database connection in our index.js file like so. Now that we import our database config, let's initialize a database connection in our index.js file. A little bit of a sidetrack. There are times that we are typing in sets of command repetitively, and sometimes it could be exhausting writing those commands every time. Let's add in the nodemon space index.js command in our package.json file. Let's assign it to the start key like so. So that every time we start our server, we'll type in npm start on the command line. I know it's not that big of a deal, but I think it's essential for you to know just in case you're a little bit new to Node.js. Because there are times that you will write long commands during your development, I think it's better to know this kind of stuff. Now, let's add in test a endpoint that will display all our tweets from the database. We use the get method in this case since we are just showing the data. The first parameter is the name of the endpoint, and the second parameter is a callback function that we are going to run. In this callback function, we will make the query to the database and return a JSON response like so. Now that we finally see our tweet endpoint in action, let's remove all of these in our index.json file and have a separate file to group our endpoints. We will put this in our tweet.js file. From here on, everything will be pretty the same. The Node.js code structure is pretty standard no matter where you put your files in your directory. If we want our functions to be available in our entry point, we'll add them in the module.exports, and that's it. Because we put our endpoint in the tweet.js file, which is a separate file, we will import it by adding its directory location on the second parameter of our app.use function. The single dot and the double dot is a common confusion when importing files in Node.js. It's essential that you also understand the directory structure. Since our tweet.js file is importing our database and it is located under the routes directory, we need to add a double dot to tell Node.js that is outside of our routes directory. The single dot represents the same level directory and the double dot represents the outside directory. In the next video, we will add the remaining endpoints to complete our simple API using Express in Node.js. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, write down your comments below and hit subscribe if you're new to this channel. Be sure to click that notification bell to get notified whenever a new video is up. Stay tuned, and see you in the next video.